Yay, there we are.
Hello,
Hello. Good
friends.
morning from Margaret and
Good evening, afternoon from Ania.
so welcome everybody to this buddy read discussion. Ania and I have been reading this book. She's got a slightly newer version we discovered, but it is No Logo by Naomi Klein, the classic from 1999. And we were reading this as part of Climathon. So my name is Margaret, if you're new here or if you're on Ania's channel and you don't know me. And I do YouTube for books and writing books. But I really love this readathon, Climathon, that Ania is helping co-host. So Ania, why don't you tell us a little bit about your channel and Climathon?
Yes, so my name is Ania. I have the channel Well Traveled Books. I post mostly book content there, wrap-ups, book reviews, that kind of stuff. And this year, my friend Tasman and I are hosting the Climathon. So the Climathon is a year-long readathon where we have 12 different prompts, and you can read books about nature, about the climate crisis, about animals, about plants, anything kind of in that realm. And one of the prompts was about capitalism, and we read the book No Logo for that. So yeah.
Very nice. And the other person I know who has read this is now signing on from your part of the world. Hi, Jim.
Hello, Jim.
Welcome. And again, if you're new, Margaret at Margaret Pinard, and I do Booktube and AuthorTube stuff and Climathon. I have completed my challenge. I'm going to ask Anya, have you read the oceans, or do you have an idea for the oceans that you're going to try to do in the last 10 days of the year?
Yeah, I'm still, if anyone out there has any recommendations for
An
an
easy
ocean,
one.
yeah, an easy one, like an ocean or water related book, islands, anything in that realm, please let me know, because it's the prompt that I am stuck on and struggling. And we've got 10, 11 days left. So
10 days, yeah.
yeah,
Oof.
if anyone out there, this is a cry for help.
All right, so capitalism. If for anyone who thinks about capitalism and thinks about climate and thinks, how are they related? What made you think this is a Climathon book? So what made you think this would be a good fit for the prompt?
So I think like the relation between capitalism and the climate crisis is huge. Like the resources that we expend to produce goods and buy goods and all of that is, I would argue, like the leading cause of the climate catastrophe that we're living in. Yeah, so I think it's good to learn about capitalism to kind of understand how we get duped into thinking that we like need all of these products as well, and like the marketing behind that. Yeah, that's how they're related for me. What about for you?
I had lots of different choices for capitalism. So I was just going to bring up the challenges to see what people put in for the capitalism prompt, because I thought that might be interesting. Plants. So just to give folks, what are the prompts? Plants, animals or fungi, consumerism or capitalism, ocean, connection, an indigenous author, change or revolution, by an activist, food, earth, a different continent, and cli-fi or positive sci-fi. So let me go back to consumerism or capitalism. There are actually 40 books added to this prompt. Let me pop this up here so we can both see it at the same time. So heifer socialism, we've got a Zola, we've got denim, all we can save, payback, Robert Reich, a book in French. I love that. Stop Saving the Planet by Jenny Price. Interesting. Yeah, it's repeating. Cal Newport, Slow Productivity. Poverty by America. Cadillac Desert. There's another classic from the 90s. Caitlin Dowdy. Asia. Is that how you say it? Asia Barber?
Yeah, Asia or Aja Barber.
Yeah. That's the one I learned about from Lena Norm's channel.
That's a great quote.
Yeah. Secret Life of Groceries, Ultra Processed People. Ooh, okay. I just got a, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that sounds really good.
I just got a great book rec yesterday or the day before from someone talking about the year of no Plastics. It was Maggie, and I looked it up, and it looked like a good Climathon book, so I'll have to put that on my wish list. Degrowth, Cobalt Red, Breeding Sweetgrass, Evicted. Yeah. So lots of great books, and you can definitely look into the Climathon 24 Storygraph Challenge if you're interested in reading more about this. So this has been on my shelf for a long time, and I wanted to read it, but I kept going, it's so old. What use is it going to be? Especially when I saw Jim reading it. He said it was really good. And so I didn't unhaul it, and I kept looking at it. It kept looking at me, and I finally was like, someone else is going to read it. That will help. Yeah, no logo. Oops. I'm sure Anya will be right back. No logo is basically about logos and brand names, and how the clothing business with logos and things has sort of grown into all of commerce around the world, and the globalization movement has really changed business, and not for the better. So she's talking about economic landscape in this book from 1999 and barely touches on climate emergency stuff, but basically talks about labor conditions and inequity and labor precarity and marketing and finances, and how all of this is linked. So it's very good. And yeah, capitalism very much relates to the climate catastrophe. Okay, well, she hasn't come back immediately, so hi, Leslie. I knew it was here. I promise. She just booped out. So we're going to see if she has to like reboot or plug in or something to come back. So we'll give her a moment. And I'll open Instagram to see if she's trying to contact me. Oh, let's see. Sweet. Well, I can go through some of the points that I had without the questions. And I can also ask you guys some of the questions. So one of the things that she highlights pretty early is that there's really no unmarketed space for people in communities anymore. So if you thought going to school, or if you thought going to work, or government spaces or public spaces like parks were unmarketed, you didn't have to worry about spending money, making decisions, being yelled at for your attention. Well, that's changed in the 90s because of how businesses change their bottom lines. And so I was thinking about that as a question. I thought, what are my unmarketed spaces? So I'll make that a banner and see if people have answers for that. Because I had some answers. Let's see. I will still go on walks throughout the city and just in the neighborhood. So I'm walking by houses and looking at their gardens and trying to identify the plants. One of the things Anya and I talked about was like how we definitely recognize logos more quickly than we recognize plants. And we really hate that, but it's really hard to get around it. But yeah, walking around in the neighborhood, looking at plants and houses, often not talking to the people, for me at least, but it is a relief from staring at a screen, or I guess maybe cars get billboards. So that's sort of a difference. When I'm reading books, I'm listening to a debate, an argument, a message, a story. And so that feels like unmarketed space, even though it's in my head. Going to the farmer's market, even though it's a market. I thought about that and how ironic that was. But the key is connecting with someone who is marketing and making sure that you're going to value the produce and find a place for it. So I thought farmer's market was a good place in my community where I connect with people who are producing, learn more about the world, try to keep things healthy for others and for myself because I'm going for organic produce, that sort of thing. When I volunteered on the farm this summer, that was great. I was talking with people who were doing the temporary farm volunteering most of the time, so younger folks, and they knew a lot about how to plant seeds, how to use the machines to vacuum seal, what is it called? Vacuum seeder. So there's like a machine to place things so far apart before you let it into the soil. For really tiny ones, it's really hard to use with your fingers. So I learned stuff like that from new people, and that was neat. Um, Homes of friends. So just for Thanksgiving, I went over to someone's house, or if I have a friend in Portland who I go hang out at her house, it's very calm. We're connecting over current events. We're talking about things that are going on in our lives, our frustrations, or our interests. And so that's not letting in the outside world that's trying to bang down your door. And then finally, I said libraries. Because while there may be splashy marketing campaigns in libraries, it's usually for public good things. So, like literacy or resume clinic, or it feels very positive, so it doesn't feel like you're not enough, buy this now, or you should be afraid of this thing, buy this product. And I think that's a lot of what marketing is. So yeah, libraries are definitely nice. I go to my small library to pick up holds, um, and sometimes I'll browse a couple shelves, and sometimes I'll ask the librarian or reference librarian for, how to research something. And I go to my central library, the bigger one, because it's a beautiful building and I like spending time in beautiful buildings. But also, if I'm just going to go to a section and kind of look through and see what they have for inspiration. So it's a vault of beautiful wisdom that is open to everyone for the express purpose of using. And I think that's a beautiful thing that we shouldn't take for granted. So, libraries, last but not least. What about you guys? And I still don't see anything from Anya. Oh, I hope it's not her internet going out for like the whole rest of the night. Oh, Jim says I've noticed YouTube has more advertising than before. Yeah. I'm trying to watch a replay of a bunch of friends on a live stream less than a week ago, and I'm stopping and starting it because I'm doing things and then listening for 10 minutes and doing things and listening for 10 minutes. And every time I come back, it's obvious what their triggers are, because like it'll show an ad when I come back and press play, or like after 5 minutes or so. So, yeah, it's pretty disruptive. I wouldn't call YouTube an unmarketed space for sure. But it's nice to have those, because I think it's kind of a leftover from a time when we actually made community decisions for something that we wanted to value and made provisions for it. So, interesting question. The next thing I had was talking about representation within power structures versus the economics behind them. Hey, sorry, the cat. And I think this comes when Naomi Klein is talking about labor and capital, right? The forever locked in a war. The capital is the people who have the money, who want to invest it and make things and make a return on their investment, versus labor, which is making the production happen with the capital and is also key, but not as valued in our present time. But they have been in a semi-negotiative relationship in the past. So representation within the power structure means that these key players in the system that we all survive on talk to each other and negotiate and have the opportunity to accomplish their goals, let's say, within this environment, versus the economics behind them. So in our present state, I feel like capital has a lot of outsized authority and predominance. He's got the zoomies. And so that means that labor doesn't have a lot of leverage, right? They can do work stoppage, they can do strikes, but if there are a lot of people who are willing to do their jobs that will step in instead, like strike breakers, then they don't have much leverage. They're just swept to the side and treated as valueless. And then the new people who come in find out that when they do the job, they're not getting enough money to live either. So the outsized predominance of power and capital and the undersized power to negotiate by labor is, I think, part of the problem of the economics behind our system. And you get that power through a variety of reasons, not least of which are monopolies and corruption and collusion and lack of regulation, etc. So I don't really get into that in these books, but I have been reading this book, How the World Ran Out of Everything, which is very closely related to No Logo. I kept finding things in here that were answering questions that came up in No Logo, which I thought was pretty interesting. And that's a book from this year, so hot off the press and like updated to answer those questions. Let's see. She hasn't reached out on Insta. Let me see if she's reached out on WhatsApp. Maybe her computer just died. What else have we got? What's your ideal community centered around? That's a good question. There was a quote that I thought was pretty good. Freedom without opportunity is a devil's gift. So freedom to do something without opportunity to do something is a devil's gift, meaning it's like a bad thing. And many times in this book, actually, we had a lot of discussions about the freedom or the right to do something without the opportunity. So you have free speech, but you have no right to be heard because your voice is a tiny, tiny drop in the ocean of megaphone voices from corporations who have the money to pay for louder speech. So you will never be heard. So it's sort of like drowned out. And yeah, I thought that was just something that people should think about today and how our system works. So in the 90s, what we were mostly talking about is the beginning of the sweatshop movement. So sweatshops had been going since the 80s. Basically, you have trade liberalization, which means that it's cheaper for US companies or Western companies to outsource manufacturing. And would you just cool it? Bean. And that leads to cheaper labor in other countries that don't have the same market protections and labor protections regulations as the US. So they're going where they can pay people less because they can't do that in America. And that turns into bad conditions and bad safety and that kind of thing. That's why they're called sweatshops. We're sweating the labor. And they're set aside in those countries, often in places called expert processing zones or EPZs or industrial zones. And it's really sort of like, here, we've cut off this 1,000-acre parcel to be a Wild West where, there's their own police and we're not going to look at anything that's going on and you guys can do your thing. And it's pretty terrible for the people who have to work there because they don't have other options. So they were comparing that in less developed countries to the very expendable service sector and retail sector and sort of what I think of as like the third. So you have like manufacturing. I don't know why I think of it as a tertiary sector, but service sector in America where you may have higher wages, but you still have very little in terms of benefits, in terms of security, in terms of loyalty, in terms of respect, right? So the precarity of the jobs on these two things around the world are eerily similar. And if these people could talk to each other through something called the internet, like they might be really powerful if they ganged up and like joined forces. So a lot of times they're separated and played against each other. And what I was thinking about, I had this like, as an American driver, sometimes I do find myself having a little bit of road rage. And I was trying to think, like, why are we so short-tempered in the car? Why do people do these stupid things? Like, they're not safe. You don't zip around someone to stop at a red light. Like, it's stupid, right? why do people do this? And I just like talked to myself in the car about like, why are people being so stupid? And I was like, I think what it boils down to is the same thing why these two sectors are being um, singled out and sort of made more vulnerable. And it's because they don't have respect for other people. So I think our response to that of not getting respect is anger. And depending on our position in the world, we'll react differently. But like in traffic, oh, you're going to turn in front of me? Oh, you're going to not, wait for me to go first or whatever the rule is. Like you want to claim your space and assert your dominance in the situation, right? Assert your right. Um, and I feel that there are a lot of situations, not just traffic, where if we had just more respect for one another, we'd have a better environment. But yeah, so I don't know if I can boil it down to that in every case, but I think that's at the root of a lot of crazy, stupid behaviors, and maybe at the root of the crazy, stupid behavior in capitalism. Who knows? Um, for example, if you had a CEO and the CEO did not respect the people who were his customers, for example, and he deployed lots of strategies to earn more money for stakeholders to get him a bigger bonus, and then something happened where it showed him that this was not going to be tolerated. There was a little bit of road rage. Finally, people were like, you know what, you're disrespecting us and we're not going to take it. We're your customers and we should be a concern. You should be treating us with respect. Maybe if there was a little bit more respect in that direction, the world would be a better place. So just had to hop on that current event trend. There's another thing about disloyalty, and we've got Merve. Hello, Merve Oper. I haven't read the book. Did Naomi Klein propose actionable solutions to branding and inequality, or did she mainly diagnose the situation? Good question. So a No Logo from 1999, I would say she does maybe two-thirds of the book, maybe a little less, are diagnosing the different sectors and the sort of progression of the different sectors acting in concert to collude and make this monopoly sort of happen and this shift in the markets. And then she does have a good portion where she's talking about the resistance movements. However, in 1999, this was people protesting in the streets, having parties, blasting music, holding up traffic. This was the anti-sweatshop movement, meaning calling brands out. This was people spray painting on billboards to get the sort of like anti-logo message out to people so they could see it and they could fight back a little. So these are all things that like don't exist anymore in their state in the book. They've sort of petered out or transformed or shifted. So one of the things that I said, it seemed like Anya and I were both disappointed about the fact that the protest movements described in the book seem to have evaporated, really. And my question was going to be, is there anything we can draw from these older movements to help in the climate action today? So I'd say that there's still definitely protests. There's still definitely activists who are doing extreme things. One of the things Anya pointed out was that her parents were in some of the climate protests in British Columbia back in the day, and she remembers this as a kid. And there are still people doing the same things, chaining themselves to trees or camping out in the branches of a tree so that it won't get cut down, and they're trying to save old growth stands of forest. So the problem there is that like it's still the same problem. We haven't like solved it for all time. People are still coming back and saying, well, why don't we do this thing, even though it's been proposed a bunch of times. So that's frustrating. But there are still people doing those things. One of the things that I thought was hopeful is when she says people in developed countries could be really powerful if they connected with folks that are in less developed countries that are being exploited by the same companies and got together and had transparency or connection through the internet. I thought that's got to have happened, right? Like, yes, there are linkages, but the system is so overbalanced on the side of capital and monopoly that we've got to have more legs to that stool to be able to balance it out. And she, in that book, is not yet at that point where she's considering it. So yes and no, in terms of actionable solutions. In the 90s, people were definitely finding success with boycotting. Um, what's interesting is that she details how the boycotts went. So sometimes it was focusing on a specific brand. For example, there was a city in California, I think it was Berkeley, that made a resolution not to buy anything from a company that was doing a certain thing with a practice around the world. And they were actually sued. So they were an avant-garde, right? That Berkeley is ahead of many other cities in America in terms of left-leaning and liberal, conserving the environment. And they actually got sued because it was discriminatory practices in their contracts. So the contract law in America is such that you have to be open to anyone submitting a bid, and you can't discriminate who you hire based on certain characteristics, race, sex, that kind of thing. And the lawsuit that was repealed and repealed and repealed, appealed and appealed and appealed, was concentrating on that. And so after that, people were like, oh, okay, we don't want to get sued. So the next example that she gave was I think, British Columbian township or something smaller that took a resolution similar, but didn't say we won't hire, because when money comes into it, you're allowed to be sued. But they said that we denounce this company for their practices. And so they made it public, they made a stance, they were being visible with their views, but they didn't make themselves vulnerable to the lawsuit, which was learning from their mistake and like evolving with the strategy. So that was a good lesson. I think maybe 10 years ago or more, there was a movement for cities and towns to take climate action, to make resolutions, to have like your top 10 goals. I think maybe some of them have made progress, but they've sort of dropped out of the headlines. So that wouldn't be covered in her book because it's happened since. But yeah, there's not a top 10 list in this book, if that's what you're looking for. I'm going to be putting up a single book review of this book. I Want a Better Catastrophe by Andrew Boyd, who's another climate activist. And this is mainly dealing with climate grief. And now that we know we're not going to make our goals, we are definitely in for some radical natural changes because of our actions or lack of actions. What are we going to do now? There are a lot of steps in there that are about actionable steps, both for our own mental health and surviving as a species, all the way down to like, what can we do in community to make sure that our values are aligning with our actions so that we don't disassociate and just, go crazy for the end of the world, because we can make a much more beautiful exit if that's what's going to happen than running around like lemmings with our paws in the air. So that's a very bad metaphor. But yeah. Isn't it ironic, says Merve, that no logo, a book critiquing branding, became a kind of brand itself, widely marketed and referenced in pop culture? How did the author respond to this? That's a good question. And I don't know. I know someone mentioned to me that no logo became its own brand, like it was a clothing brand, exactly, or something like that. Which is co-optation, right? So in the book, there's a sort of microcosm of this happening, and that is that the marketing departments in these big corporations, especially for clothing, were going to inner city neighborhoods and trying to get like the edgy, the hip, the culture of often African American inner city neighborhoods, and appropriating it and making that like the cool new thing. So they were co-opting the youth culture and African American culture and using that for their marketing campaigns. And on one hand, it sort of makes those communities feel listened to at the very beginning. But on the other hand, after, a second in history, they realize that they're being exploited, right? And so for some, they don't realize, and it's the hip new thing. It's the clothing everybody wants. It's the shoes everybody needs, and like will, steal money to buy. But at some point, they realize like this is co-optation, this is appropriation, and it doesn't really make sense as an exchange. I was thinking about this because I was listening to, I think it was Bree at Locked Booktition talk with Ashley of Bookish Realm. They were talking about a book. They're talking about other booktubers in other countries who are using English slang that came from African American culture and feeling really weird about that. And that's the same kind of feeling, I think, that exchange of like, you're commenting using language that you learned from us that has been spun into something cool. So you're using it without knowing that it came from us, these like Black booktubers and book reviewers. And it's an interesting dynamic. I don't know how it makes sense, how it's sort of taken, sanitized, shined up or glossed up and like packaged. I don't really understand how this works because I am not a marketer in that space. But yeah, that's something that she notices and calls out. So I think that's really important and still relevant. And I don't know how she responded to like no logo going big. I know this was a breakout book, and like she's definitely written several since then about the evolution of it. But I don't know how she sort of dealt with that difficult snowball effect. But great question. I wish Ania was here to help me. Oh, no logo was a skincare product line as well. Interesting. I wonder if they were environmentally safe at all. Yeah. Oh, it's hard to know, right? When you read ingredients and whatnot, or how it was processed, or how the labor was treated. It's hard to know. You can't believe everything you see on the internet. Just saying. Jim says, woke, as an example, came from African American English, and now certain people on the right use it for anything they don't like. Exactly. Exactly. That's definitely like something that's been twisted out of all recognition. Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to check in on WhatsApp again to see if she's doing okay, if she could read my message. Trying to reconnect. My internet is gone. Okay, internet is back. And that was a minute ago, so we'll see. Computer slowly loading pages. I don't know what the heck happened. No data at all. Okay. But that was like now. So she's trying to get back on. So we'll see. So other stuff that's not a question that I might just like pop on. The disloyalty thing. So because this was written in the 90s, when things were just coming to fruition, it was framed as still the transition out of a manufacturing-based economy to a service-based economy, which is what America was going through. And the companies framed this as disloyalty because people were, oh no, this is two types of disloyalty. So for one, with the brands, after it went through this very successful cycle of like 8 years or so, people then started to be like, oh, you guys are doing this? Like, I don't like this anymore, whatever the brand name was. I don't respect, I don't support, I don't want to be a part of that. And so that like brand disloyalty, cheating on the brand you love, like using a competitor's thing or a generic names thing. That's one type of disloyalty. But another type of disloyalty is the disconnection between the workers in a company and the CEOs, the C-suite, as they call the people at the top, the shareholders, and being like a branch of that. And And I think this is sort of related to the fact that we've got atomization, we've got self-reliance in America. Like we've got all these things that say don't depend on other people. So the system is broken. And she's back. Can I bring you on? Okay. It's all right. I was just tap dancing. Wait.
That's
there
wild.
You go.
Actually, when you said, you're just saying right now something about like dependence on other people or something like that.
Yeah.
And so my internet went out. I have the same provider for my like my house internet and my phone. And there was just nothing. Like sometimes it cuts out for like a second, but there was nothing for however like 20 minutes. And it made me realize how dependent I am on that, because I was like, what do I do? Like if it just doesn't come back.
Yeah.
And like the live stream is one thing, but like everything else in life. Anyways, I'm so sorry about that.
No worries. No, we were talking about like in our discussion in November when we were reading it, was like, if you, in my perpetual apocalypse mind, I'm like, if I lose electricity and it doesn't come back within the day and I don't get updates on my phone and everything goes out, like I don't know how to take care of myself. I'm not going to survive. I'm not going to have water. I'm not going to have like cleaning. I'm not going to have anything in my fridge. Like after 2 days, I'm going to have to migrate. Like,
yes,
so.
yes. 100%.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so I will ask you the question that I asked some folks about where is your unmarketed space? Like, where do you go for like connection that's not marketed?
Unmarketed space.
Because she talks about this, the fact that it's invaded the schools, it's invaded the bathroom stalls, it's invaded our government, you know, whatever, our buses are covered in ads. Like, where's your unmarketed space, like your safe space?
I think I would actually say probably the only time that I feel like I'm not being marketed to is when I'm not on my phone. And the only time I'm really not on my phone is when I'm biking. And I do a lot of it like through nature as well. But I think that's the only time, because even if I'm, you know, in my kitchen preparing dinner or something and I'm theoretically being unmarketed to in that moment, I'm still checking something on my phone. I'm still engaging, unfortunately, because attention span is nil. Yeah, I think that's maybe the only time, because even if I'm reading, I finish a chapter and I
check your phone. Yeah.
Which I hate. It's a terrible thing and I'm trying to get out of it, but yeah. What was your answer for that?
So I said when I go on walks, I told the folks about like plant ID versus logo ID, because I'm trying to like get better at that. When I'm in books and I'm absorbed in a book and like I'm in my imagination, it's kind of cheating because it's in my head, but I'm gonna count that.
Yeah.
I said the farmer's market, even though it's a market, like I feel like I'm connecting with people and learning about things and trying to make life healthier for more people. So that doesn't feel like marketed to, even though that's kind of what it is. Volunteering on the farm, being in other friends' homes and like talking and having meals together. So that was a good like revisiting when I was at Thanksgiving with folks. And libraries. How often do you go to your library?
I was going quite a bit when I first moved to Poland. I've stopped a little bit, but I'm trying to think if there's marketing in the libraries here. If it's marketing, it's probably in the way that I would agree with, if that makes sense. Like they're marketing values that I would agree with. So it doesn't feel like marketing to me.
Yeah.
Even though it is, it's just I'm biased essentially. Yeah, that's a good one. But I think the one about friends and like being in other people's homes, that just feels like community. Like you're just in that space together and you're present with these people. And then, yeah, you're not being marketed to. I agree with that one. That's a good one.
That's good. What else did I have? Okay, so here's a book question. If we allow, and we had some good questions from Merve. Did you know the answer to this one? So no logo became a kind of brand itself, widely marketed and referenced. Do you know how Naomi Klein responded to this, if at all? I didn't know the answer to that, but
no.
Okay. It's a good question though. If anyone knows, feel free to chime in.
Someone can call Naomi right now. That'd be great.
Right. So Kappa was talking about no logo as a skincare product, which I didn't know. She says it has simple packaging, plain labels, no advertising, just there and available. Well, now I know about it from word of mouth advertising. So thank you for that.
I remember there was in Canada I think it was in No Frills, which is like a chain market store. They had their own brand essentially, and it was called No Name, and it was just like yellow packaging, nothing. It was just like yellow green peas and like nothing else on it essentially. But yeah, that's marketing in and of itself. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Jim says, even in fiction, you sometimes get marketing in a way. Brands of car, perfume, cereal might be mentioned. Yeah, actually, when was I just talking about this? I was on a stream last night, the Christmas special for Gareth and Dave, and we're just chatting about random stuff. And they said, when was the last time you bought something because you saw an advertising for it? And I thought, there's only one time, and it was socks. But usually I try to remember that I was annoyed, and I try to like remember that resentful feeling. So I associate that with the brand, and I don't buy it. It's the opposite.
That's good. That's like flipping it on its head.
Yeah. So maybe this is what would happen when I read about it, where I'm like, oh, if they're trying to get me to buy a book. I don't think many people do that when they're writing fiction. Drop a name and think, oh, they're gonna buy this. Like I don't think people get deals like that. There's no product placement as far as I know, and my author friends.
That would be interesting to know if really large bestseller authors get brand placement deals in their books, because it happens in movies and TV shows. But I'm curious if it happens.
Right. So are books different? I don't know.
I would like to hope they are, but
yeah, I would. I mean, I know some mid-list authors. I don't think that's a thing, but I can ask. I can ask.
Okay.
Okay. So if we allow that Naomi Klein's portrayal of brand or corporate takeover of the world economy is accurate, what set the stage for it? So this is like big picture economy stuff. What do you think would shift players enough to shift again? So if we think about like capital shareholders, CEOs at the top, and we talk about labor and unions, and we talk about service workers and employees, and we talk about other countries, those same layers of society and activist groups. How do you think what happened to precipitate this shift? And then how do you think it's going to change to make anything change now?
It's changed drastically, yeah. I actually, it's kind of, the thing that worries me, I guess, is that the people at the top, like the CEOs, the shareholders, they already have so much power that it's hard to take that power away from them at this point. Even though I think most people, like I was reading a book about degrowth recently that was talking about like how capital and stuff would be redistributed if we did kind of have a democracy. If everyone actually had a vote in terms of, do we want to take more than we need, etc. Most people would take what they need and that's it, right? Maybe a little bit more and things would be distributed equally. But once the people at the top have that power, I don't know, maybe we're seeing a shift now, right? Like with what's been happening in America with like the CEO shooting and stuff, and like people kind of coming together and more openly talking about things not being okay. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it needs to be, I think in many different times in the past 20 years, we've had like glimpses of people realizing that we're being played against each other when really it's the third party that's doing the playing off one another, and we need to gang up on them. But because there's always like a bribe or like a distraction for some key party, there's never the unity or solidarity or cohesion to make that change and go into effect. So I don't know what it would take to do that, but
yeah, that's exactly it, right? There's always a scapegoat, always someone that the people in power, whether that's in power that they're CEO or they have the power of the media or the control of the media or whatever, there's always someone that they're going to blame that's not them, even though like we in and of ourselves are not to blame for the most part. Right? It's I don't know.
Okay, Jim says, in American Psycho, the brand-obsessed Patrick Bateman talks about all the hair products, lotions, etc. that he uses, as well as the brand of his clothes, Brooks Brothers, Bill Blast, etc. The 80s is like the poster child for me, at least in my perception, of like consumerism. And
Hmm.
I don't think it's an accident that that is when all the deregulation was like, prices are falling, like Walmart's, like slogan, like just deregulation, toss it out the window every chance you get. The book about the supply chain that I was reading is talking about Jimmy Carter did a couple key things for shipping and um, trucking, I think, that were deregulations. But then, of course, Reagan came in. It was like, let's have a party and shred all this stuff and make it into confetti. And that really allowed everyone to grab just for power and monopolize and collude and all that stuff. So, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Do you have that impression of the 80s or is it a different prism? Do you see the 90s as that or it's
I
always
feel
the
like
decade before you went through like teenager head?
I almost feel like now feels like everything is like hyper consumerism. And maybe because it's like easier to get stuff and everything is so inexpensive. And it's a world I don't really live in, but I watch a lot of critiques of, like Temu and Shein and all these places where it's you're just always shopping. Like even when I sit on the train sometimes and I look around, like half the people on their phones are just like, add to cart, $2 Christmas ornament, sure, whatever, blah, 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 right? Um, yeah, and maybe because like in the 90s you had to go to a store, you had to, there was all these like steps you had to take to consume something, and now it's just literally one click, right? And you can buy
Yeah.
something, and it feels like now is very hyper consumer.
Well, so that's the immediate gratification piece of no
Mhm,
waiting and no attention span. So I think those things go together really well right now for
mhm.
sure because of our
Yeah.
technology. But I think of the 80s as like that's when they made it cool. So the cultural stuff had to really come
Mm.
into play first to make
Yeah.
it like what people wanted before all the
Mhm,
enabling pieces came into play.
mhm.
Um, yeah. And now I think we have a small but mighty movement that's like, we don't want this and we reject this. And we have like our community and our linkages and we're coming back. We're bringing it back.
I
Uh,
feel like the hope I had when I started reading this book, because that's what it felt like. Like there was this like community of people that were kind of critiquing things. And then as we kept reading, I was like, wow, a lot of these problems still exist in some way, shape, or form. A lot of them even more than they did before. And people have been talking about it for, 20, 30 years. I don't know. That's what kind of, yeah, makes me a little scared, sad at the same time.
yeah. I have a book for you.
I do want a better catastrophe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, why did people not act? Like, why did we not have better decisions? It's really sad, but that's
Mhm.
where we are.
Yeah. I
So
was
this
thinking,
is go
just
ahead.
to go to Jim's last comment about using like Brooks Brothers, Bill Blass, and all these brands. I think like in the book how she talks about how brands aren't selling a product, they're selling like a brand and an image. And I think sometimes if an author theoretically is painting a character, they can throw in a couple sort of like, oh, like she uses a Stanley Cup and she really likes Ugg slippers, for example.
Right,
And
right.
we instantly have an idea of who this person is, rightfully or wrongfully, right? But it can also be kind of like an easy way to describe a person. Oh, he wears Adidas tracksuits. And you're like, what does
Right.
that mean to me, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. It's a shortcut. It's a
Mhm.
brand image shortcut. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Like instead of describing the character, they're not trying to sell us something other than the character. Theoretically, they could also be sponsored by Stanley Cups. I don't know, but
Yeah.
um,
But the image is already in the cultural consciousness, so that they're
mhm,
using that as a thousand words, basically, pictures
mhm.
with a thousand words, because they're giving a lot of information just with that small thing, without the help of language, really, just the image.
Yes,
Interesting.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Self Pub with Andy. Hello.
Hello, hello.
Diane. Hello, hello.
Mm.
If a person drives a BMW, it creates a different impression than if they drive a Renault. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We make judgments on people based on this, and so that's what authors use as part of their crafting of the character.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question I had was about I feel like we were both a little disappointed when we heard about the protest movements that they sort of evaporated. Is there anything that we can draw from those older movements to help with climate action today that you can think of, like, oh, this happened, we could translate it to this or link up that with that?
Interesting.
My hair is bugging me.
I'm trying to think back. Maybe because before it feels like there was more peaceful protests. Like I just keep thinking about the bike protests, obviously.
Yeah. I didn't say anything about that, so explain a little bit what those were.
Essentially just taking over a community, a street, with like bikes, but also with like music and that kind of stuff, and throwing like a impromptu party in a way without sponsors, like just being like, we have a boombox, let's say, and we can have, people riding around on bikes and kind of incorporating all of that together.
Kind of like a flash mob with bikes. So you didn't have to get a permit to take over. You're just traffic. So make way, it's great.
Exactly. And I don't know, I think that could still, I would say that could still work today, but it happened back then and it didn't work. Like those things didn't drastically change. So maybe we shouldn't even be trying to take inspiration from something that didn't inherently change the systems and change how people view it.
But lessons.
Yeah. My lesson is that I want to join a bike flash mob.
Good lesson. Good lesson.
Yeah. Hello.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think could transfer over in terms of like how we could shape movements today?
Well, I mean, she's in the age of like listservs. So like the update for that is email newsletters, Substacks, stuff like that, social media. I think that does both educate people and connect people for action, but there's a long funnel between like people knowing nothing and people acting together in concert. So I don't know how to intensify that. That would be my issue of like, I realize there's steps along the way to be like, get someone interested and get them educated and join them in a community and then perform an action. But I don't know how to like speed that up or like strengthen it in multiple places.
Yeah.
I don't
And
know.
I think
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think if things are also done online, it's harder to strengthen it because if you are educating someone or if you're trying to work in some sort of community and it's online, I think for me, at least, I still feel that distance. Whereas if I'm in a group setting in person, organizing or writing pamphlets or protesting, you feel that like mobilization energy more and faster versus like a newsletter essentially, right? Where you're learning, but there still feels like there's distance, at least for me. I don't know.
Right. There was this revolutionary theory in like networking and job searching that I was told so many times. It was about, it's your weak links that will get you the new job. Did you ever hear that?
No.
So your strong links are the people that you spend the most time with and like, and what interact with whatever. But then your weak links are like the friends of friends. So people you don't know as well, but they will have networks that you have not tapped because they are not your networks. So those are the people who will actually connect you to something because they know a different group than you do. And I was like, yeah, but it's also weak. So if you're going to depend on those people to like come through with a connection of a name to get you an interview, like they're also weak links. So you can't really depend. You have to get to know them better. Yeah. So strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah. It's like the risk is bigger, but the reward is potentially bigger as well in a way. Okay.
Yeah. Book chat with Pat. Hello. No worries. Diana said, I did join Climathon on Storygraph. Moving forward, will there be a 2025? Yes.
There will be 2025. Information to come in the next week or two.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Mhm.
All right. I did email you this question before, but I know you've been occupied with lots of things. If you had one magical change to make that you thought could be like a linchpin for drastic change for a new world order, what would it be? What do you think would have the most impact if you could like wave a wand?
I don't know if this is exactly what you're getting at, but I always just think about like if people, and I don't actually blame this on people, I blame this on marketing, but if people didn't feel like their possessions defined who they were, that I feel like would have such a shift because we would be consuming very differently. Our values would be so incredibly different as well. I think it would strengthen our connection with people because, like, yeah, you're looking at a person as a person, not as if they drive a BMW or a Renault, right? Yeah, so I think if people didn't have this idea pushed into them that like your possessions are who you are, essentially.
Did they?
But maybe that's a little too like.
Did they telegraph your value? Yeah. So you're in people's brains. That's definitely more magical than my suggestion. So my suggestion was more about like money transparency because I think if everyone could see like all the shell games, shell companies where people stash their money, how much they have, and what their policies are. If we had transparency into that money that was affecting political processes and like ordering hits and all this stuff, I think people will get really mad and actually like demand change. So I would actually make you money transparency and citizen assemblies. So one of the things I really liked in this, I think it was in this one. No, it wasn't. It was in a different book. Which book was it? It was talking about citizen assemblies in France after the Yellow Vest movement. And it was talking about how they convened citizen assemblies and they just were like rotated, everyone had a vote and you just rotated your facilitator in and out for 3 months or something, and then you voted on things, had recommendations, and then it actually went into effect. It wasn't like a advisory panel which feels powerless.
Cool.
Yeah
That's I think the money transparency one is a big one, and I think I'm just really consumed in this world right now of like influencer culture. But I think also if we had transparency for influencers, like if someone's trying to sell us, a Amazon must have blah, 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 and we see how much money that makes them, the fact that they talk about this cup, link in bio, that they've made, let's say $7,000 off of that. But you also see their budget, right? Because I think a lot of people want to live like people do on the internet, but like that's not real, and also their financial situation is so different than probably yours is. And yeah, I think just in general, I think people should talk about money more. Yeah So I know that struck a chord with me for sure.
Let's see. I was curious, how are Amazon and Walmart seen outside the US? Is it similar to how we see them? So in No Logo, she's basically talking about, what is she talking about? Walmart and Levi's, and I forget some of the bigger names. But Amazon is like a couple mentions. Amazon is not huge yet in 1999, so like it hasn't come on the scene in all its glory. But yeah, how are those seen outside the US? Because we've got these big parasites.
Walmart. I don't think Walmart's very, because I don't think Walmart's outside of America, like Canada and America, is it?
I don't know.
I don't think so. At least not like.
But it's definitely pulling all its products from the world, right? Everything is made and shipped in.
Everywhere elsewhere, yeah. In terms of like in Europe, I would say Amazon is viewed very similarly to like in America. I think a lot of people use it. I always see it circulating around. So I think general public, even if they don't have a favorable view of Amazon, I think most people are in the world. And I think Walmart doesn't have any impact as far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah, because I just don't think it has Probably it has an impact in places where the like factories are for things that are made for
Right.
Walmart, but in terms of like citizens around, I don't think I've talked about Walmart a single time since I've been in Europe. So,
Oh, okay. Okay.
so I don't think it's non-existent. It's like Costco probably, like where unless you live in the places that either sell
Yeah.
there is a Costco store or like the items are produced in, so you're affected by that. I don't think it's like in the culture at all.
Okay. So
Yeah.
unless they're directly interacting with a vendor, like as a
Yes.
consumer, it's
Mhm.
just seen as an American institution. Okay.
Mhm.
We've
Yeah.
got a whole I feel like we have a whole tier system about the idea of shoppers at different places and what it says about you. So it's a
Mm.
branding exercise because Costco is different from Walmart, is different from Target.
Mhm.
Like there's always sort of like, oh, you shop there, and it's like it's not a comprehensive view. It's just
Mhm.
based on branding. Because I was
Yeah.
listening to TikTok this morning and someone was talking about Trader Joe's is joining with Amazon and I don't remember the third one, to sue to make the National Labor Relations Board unconstitutional. So this is something we've had for like 50 years that works with
Mhm.
the relationship between labor and management and like negotiations and stuff.
Yeah.
And they want to sue it out of existence. And I was like, Trader Joe's, that's not a good look.
No, Trader
But
Joe's is
it's
like
like the
people.
happy hippie store that is good to its employees. And you're like,
Yeah.
how is this both working? Yeah.
It's one of those things though, right? Like once a company becomes a certain size, it stops being a hippie little co-op where they have bells and like all the employees are, except for like a select few companies. I don't know, like Dr.
Yeah.
Bronner's, for example, like everyone else just, yeah, joins with Amazon to sue.
Yeah.
Because the money is there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The immediate gratification thing I'm thinking, because like Trader Joe's, you don't order online, right? I'm
Mhm.
trying to think about Amazon and how it's like the fastest of the viruses in the culture. And I'm
Mhm.
kind of like, it's the one click, it's the
Yeah.
supply chain management and all that stuff. It's the convenience. And I
Mhm.
think along with your possessions shouldn't dictate your value. We have to work on changing people's reliance on convenience. I think because of all
Mhm.
the stuff that's going on, people are just like, I can't. I just need
Mhm.
this thing now and my life will be easier. And like they just can't deal with it because we don't have resources, because we don't have
Mhm.
safe space, because we don't have like rest.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, this like epidemic of everything being convenient. Like we work hard. Like most people work very, very hard in their everyday lives, but because of all of that overwhelm of everything else, like you're saying, you just okay, I want a chocolate bar, and I want it right now. Send it my way, right? And yeah, there's like not a lot of room for delayed gratification. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know, man.
So I just finished this last night, about the supply chain.
Mm.
It's a great consumerist book for next year if anyone's interested. But
That's really-
he closes with a quote from Barbara Ehrenreich. Have you read Nickel and Dimed? That was another like 25-year-old book. It's really good. And he closes with a quote from her about your goods are cheap, your consumer goods are cheap because you have a voluntary gift of someone's labor. Someone is laboring at the bottom and they're skipping a meal. So they're going
Mhm.
hungry so that your, milk can get there on time. They're
Mhm.
going without seeing their kids so that your kids will be taken care of in the childcare place. Like there is a gift of someone's labor. They're the biggest philanthropists in the world at the
Mhm.
bottom minimum wage sector. And people don't
Yeah.
realize like it's flowing up, like all this
Mhm.
value, and it's not being accounted for. And I thought, wow, that's a really good reframing. I like that.
Mhm. That's like the quote of like live simply so others can simply live. Like
Yeah,
if we live
yeah,
with less, others can have more theoretically,
right, right.
but it's hard to yeah, get that into why can't that be popular? How do we market that?
Yeah, make that popular again.
Mhm.
Um, Merve says, in Turkey, we love Amazon. Its customer service is far superior to most of our local e-commerce companies.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
They have their customers. I remember like years ago when I was in university, I ordered a textbook from Amazon, and I ordered the paperback, but they accidentally sent me the hardback. And so I emailed them to be like, hey, like you sent me the wrong product, even though no, I ordered the hardback. They sent me I forget exactly what it was, but I emailed them and I didn't want anything. I just emailed them to be like, this is the wrong item. They sent me back all of my money and they told me to keep the book. I was like, that doesn't even make sense. But
yeah,
I'm a broke like university student, of course. I love
yeah.
so much. But I was like, wow,
Yeah.
amazing Amazon, customer service. But yeah.
Okay, but that's part of the strategy, right? So when we were talking about how in the 90s, not industrial, but the mega store strategy was to move in and like dominate the industry. Like if you can't move in with 40 stores at once, who even are you? And you said, who was it that replaced all the Roots or
Oh,
HPC or
yeah.
something in Canada and had to go home?
Target. Yeah. When Zellers closed in Target, Target came into Canada and they opened like 200 stores. These are not concrete facts. They opened like 200 stores, and within a year they essentially liquidated and lost like $3.2 billion or something because they just tried to like come in, overtake. They didn't understand the Canadian market. It was hilarious to watch, but yeah.
When it's your sole strategy to be like the monopoly and you realize, oh wait, people aren't flocking to us. What do we do?
Yeah. I don't know.
So
Yeah,
it's the big companies like that can take a loss. So in that crafty customer service of Amazon, where we say keep it and we'll refund you your money, no problem.
Yeah.
Trader Joe's does that too. They're like returns, no questions asked, totally fine. And I love that policy. But is it part of a greater strategy where they're taking a loss in one category so that they can gain market share, gain power, and then dictate the terms to you? That's the question to ask.
I think 100%. Like, because like in that moment, I was like, wow, Amazon is, has great customer service. But then as I learned more about Amazon, I was like, I don't really want great customer service. I want
at that price. That's the unspoken cost. Yeah. Beware the unspoken cost. It's like interacting with the Fae. You have to make sure you say something exactly right because they could interpret it a different way.
Yeah. And I think too, like specifically about Amazon, it's like I haven't bought from Amazon in a long time because I have access to things in other ways as well. But like I wish that if you bought something off of Amazon, you could like type in and be like, this is not urgent. Like, please don't have anyone die in your factory trying to deliver this to me. If it comes in 2 weeks, it's fine. Right. Yeah. But there isn't. They're like, we just got to get it into her house yesterday. And I'm like,
you know where you can do that? At the post office, which they're trying to privatize right now. You can say, I don't care. Put it on the slow boat to China. I don't care. I want to pay $5, not $50.
Yes. See, that's where you have a choice.
Yeah, you still have a choice because it's a public service. Yeah. Jim says, my only experience of Walmart was when I visited the US. So yeah, confirming it's not elsewhere in the world. It's just monstrous in terms of demand in the rest of the world because it gets so much stuff from other countries.
Yeah.
It is in Canada and Mexico, though. Okay. Thank you, Diane. Jim says, I was surprised to see Prime here in Spar. I know what Spar is. Spar is in Ireland. It's like a convenience store. How can you have Prime in Spar? Is it like maybe it's a delivery spot? I don't know. Cat Paw hello says there are Walmarts in Cancun, but not in Mexico City. It's just another supermarket chain that bought ORLA a few years ago. Interesting. Operates in 19 countries. Walmart or Prime, like Amazon? I'm getting mixed up here.
Walmart.
Something like in the US, Walmart. Yeah. Amazon is marketing hard to make inroads into the market currently occupied by Mercado Libre. Oh, see, they're trying to take over, just like Target. I'd be interested in Target as well. Yeah. Jim says we have the fast food franchises like McDonald's, KFC, Wendy's, Burger King, Dunkin' Donuts, which is crazy. Like, what do Georgians make of Dunkin' Donuts? There's no history. There's no accent. Like, what's the draw?
I was actually when I was visiting my parents in Spain last month or 2 months ago, I was at the mall and there was a Dunkin' Donuts there. And I was curious. I was like, what do they have here? Yeah. And it's just like the regular stuff, but one donut was, I think, €6. And I was like, I'm good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's the branding.
Yeah.
So that's not the strategy of take a loss, because they're in a new market and they're unknown. So interesting.
Yeah. But there is a bit of, I think people like American kind of fast food chains. Like I had a friend from Spain and he was obsessed with this idea of Taco Bell because he always saw it like in movies or in videos or whatever. Like there was like Taco Bell was this like, this like magical thing. And I remember we went to Taco Bell once in Spain together. And it was just like this like come to Jesus moment for him because he's like, oh, like this is what I always saw. And I was like, I mean, it's fine. It's like, it's fast food, whatever. But it like that branding worked so deeply because it's so, you just see it in so many places. I don't know.
Yeah. Was it in No Logo that I was reading about the like fantasy worlds and like Celebration, Florida? I think so, right?
Yeah.
Fantasy towns.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like cultivating this magical world in your mind of like everything's fine here. There's no crime and everyone's the same. And it's very Wrinkle in Time, like Camazotz. It's like that planet where everyone's bouncing the ball at the same time. It's creepy. It's creepy.
Yes.
The slow deliver, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Two YouTubers.
The Paul brothers, Logan and they're like huge YouTubers and they have like tons of brands and products and stuff like that. And one of the like
tell themselves or that they shill
they
for
like they shill for it, let's be real.
Okay.
And I've seen Prime in Poland as well. And like there's kind of like a
heard of this
discount kind of market, and I've seen it there as well.
Random.
But yeah, if they
Logan Paul, I think I've been recommended him by my nephew.
It's not worth watching. Let me just say.
Plan says, I feel like the new AI will be a game changer in customer service and in other dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So obviously No Logo doesn't say anything about AI. We're not there yet. But did you have thoughts about like where this will be the most impactful or what the greatest danger is in this conversation? Because I definitely have thoughts, but they're sort of all over the place. They're not organized because that wasn't part of this discussion. So I'm not prepared. Did you have like anything that off the cuff?
I try not to think about AI too much because it scares me. And I see it too often now when I'm scrolling and I'm like, did that hedgehog really take a cute little bath? Like, I don't know. It's looking a little too fake. So yeah, I don't have concrete thoughts. So if you want to share yours, please feel free.
Well, so the scattershot thoughts are that like, I'm worried because people are investing in this and thinking it's their salvation, just kind of like technology will save us for climate change. And I'm like, no, like Little Red Riding Hood, like, no, we're past that. It's got a huge effect in terms of, I think it's electricity. I listened to one video and I thought it was going to be, no, it's not electricity, it's heat. So you know how cities have a heat island effect because of the heat generation, as well as the reflective surfaces and all this kind of stuff that makes the temperature locally hotter than it would be outside the city. The places where they have servers that do AI activity, which are like a new industry, a whole new thing being developed, they also have heat effects because of all the like fans running and stuff. So not only is it drawing lots of new power, just like cloud computing, but every time you ask ChatGPT something, it's like adding to the heat in the atmosphere. It's got to go somewhere, and it's still in the planet. So like, just add that into your climate catastrophe.
Yeah, I need to actually do some research into that because I keep seeing this stat that like if you ask ChatGPT versus like ask Google, it's like, I don't know, 6 times more energy is used for some reason, and I don't understand why. Like I don't have ChatGPT anyways, but like I'm curious why like if I ask that same question, why one uses so much more energy than just like a regular Google search.
So I think Google is pulling on its database of searched things. I don't know if Ask Google is AI. I think that maybe the learned the large language model learning is what's different with the AI, because it's pulling from a different database that it's assembled and it's processing and like adding. So maybe something with that process is different from Ask Google.
Interesting.
And this is not even going into all the like, how can we tell reality from fake, like all the mental health stuff. Like I'm just talking about economics here.
Yeah.
Dunkin' Donuts had Georgian dishes as well, like lobiani and khachapuri, which is great.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool. Actually, when I travel, I love going into a McDonald's, not to buy anything, but just to see what they're selling.
Yeah, yeah.
I have such a grasp on like the market.
Yeah. They have like a nod to local culture.
Yeah, hats off to them, because every time I travel, I walk into a McDonald's just to look at the menu and be like,
McDonald's is ruining the world. I stand by that. Like
fully, yes.
Amazon for the beef markets. Like no.
Yes.
AI generated cookbooks and children's books.
Yeah, I've actually been trying to buy like a bit of like books about like farming and cooking and preservation, like food preservation, that are like published a long time ago, so I know that information is correct and not like AI generated what mushrooms should you eat and then you might
yeah
you know. Yeah.
And everybody's bringing up the point of AI is so much better than mind control. So behavioral analytics are going to be telling on us, I think is what she means. Oh, which is the last thing we want with global. I'm not sure what the ... means. What?
Global warming?
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, it is the last thing we want.
Jim worked at McDonald's in Paris. Yeah.
And they sold macarons.
Macaron? Really?
Probably. It's Paris. They have to. I don't know. Don't they have that like famous Parisian bakery that sells like really expensive ones?
La Durée? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I guarantee McDonald's.
Fancy place, yeah. Okay, let's see. Amazon and Walmart is where we got started on that. I already talked a little bit about appropriation of African American culture that was talked about. Oh, okay. What about the deal? So we talked a little bit when we were reading in November about we had this sort of deal that we would lose small businesses and local communities in return for cheap goods and convenience in getting them. And I think what people are so mad about now with the inflation because of the pandemic and all this stuff is that that deal is being broken and we're not getting cheap, we're getting convenient, but we've also lost like the local communities. And so we're sort of losing out and life is not great because of this. And I put emotional ties, and I'm not sure why I put that in my notes. Do you remember what you were thinking about when we were talking about any of this stuff about like maybe how that affects the players on the stage and how we can leverage it for action?
I don't remember specifically what I was thinking then, but right now as you were talking, I'm thinking kind of how it's actually a good time for small businesses potentially to come through, right? Because if their pricing is very similar to these like large conglomerates that were promising these low prices before, if that difference is not really there anymore, then it could be a good time for small businesses to be like, hey, like, you know, if you're not getting that deal anymore, why aren't you supporting us, essentially?
Yeah, we're in your community. We're volunteering at your school. Like you're coming to my kid's bake sale, like that kind of stuff.
We are not the problem. Yeah.
What's difficult is I'll see booksellers on TikTok and they're talking about people who come in and say, "Oh, I can get this $1 cheaper on Amazon," and you're like, "You're in my store, bitch!"
Yes,
like, what are you doing? What are we doing here?
Yeah, and I understand like there are situations where you need something and you cannot afford it from like a smaller business at a higher price or whatever, right? Let's say that. But I think especially for things that are not necessities, it's hard for me to like justify, I guess, cutting those corners, right? And especially for like $1, right? So let's say someone buys 10 books in a year, but if they buy them at the local bookshop, they can only buy 9 books.
Yeah.
Maybe 9's okay.
Yeah.
No, it's hard. I don't know. I struggle a lot with that. I think I struggle, and I think I mentioned this to you, right? Where it's like, I always thought about like, how do we get people to care about people that are on the other side of the planet? It's like, this person made your clothes. Like, you should also care about their well-being. But if someone's in the bookstore looking at the person they're supposed to care at, and they still are like, well, Jeffrey Bezos is going to sell it for $1 cheaper. I'm like, the person's in front of you. Like, you have to care about them. Come on.
Yeah. That's atomization, that's self-reliance, that's disrespect. Like there's all those things that are like sort of broken in our communities. I'm thinking right now about the book chain revolution. So the guy who's part of Waterstones, who had his own bookstore, Daunt bookseller, James Daunt, and is now the CEO of Barnes & Noble, and he's revamping Barnes & Noble, by telling all the stores to do their own thing and like specialize and differentiate and try to be like the local bookstore and choose different books. And it's like, I'm sorry, you missed the memo. This is kind of like the big guy coming back and trying to claim the market of the little people. And I'm like, what?
But it'll work. It will work, I think, because that price will still be cheaper, but people will walk in and have that like small feel. And then they're giving the people what we think we want, I guess.
Well,
I'm not saying it's good, but
if they're connected to the community, if they're talking with people and their book clubs are serving a need that exists, like that will work for them. But if they're still going off of, well, this is the TikTok algorithm and I'm going to highlight these books because this, I don't know, romantasy author is really famous and, it's not what the community actually wants, then poof. Yeah, I hope. Anyway.
It doesn't change. Yeah.
The McDonald's manager was a Moroccan woman, so she would have been unlikely to have become the manager of a traditional French restaurant. So it's providing opportunity. That's interesting. That's a fair point. Also, the kitchens were much cleaner than those of traditional French restaurants because the customer can see into the kitchen. So not all bad. Fair point. Yeah. All right.
Really a clean kitchen.
Energy consumption by AI is rising rapidly. It's predicted to consume twice as much energy as the whole of France by 2030. So this is worldwide artificial intelligence, according to some calculations. Interesting. ChatGPT consumes a lot of energy in the process, up to 25 times more than a Google search.
That's a lot more.
Yeah. Let's see if there's anything else. I know we're a little over time, so...
Sorry, this also disappeared for 20 minutes or whatever. Yeah.
A productive way to direct your outrage. How about that? That's a good topic to end on.
Productive way to direct your outrage.
Yeah. So in terms of Climathon, like thinking about, I'm really, up in arms about what's happening. I want to get people involved and excited and taking action. If outrage is a part of that equation, then hey, who am I to say no? What's a productive way to direct your outrage about the inequality that is still relevant, that we read about from 20 years ago and just has gotten worse today? What do you think?
I think there's like a okay, yeah, sorry, this is making my brain break a little bit, but there's like in all we can save, they had like this
Venn diagram.
Venn diagram, yeah, and it essentially was like what you are good at. Oh, what was it? I'm gonna look it up because it was actually Venn diagram.
I'm just gonna Google it too. It's like,
yeah,
I'm sorry. All right.
If you're able to, it's not even on here. So
there's so many great books on the Storygraph challenge. I'm gonna have to add them all to my list.
This one, can I send this to you somehow so you can pull it
up?
Yeah,
you're in the private chat.
Private chat. Okay, I think this is. maybe the link.
You can also share your screen if you just want to do that.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
Sorry, I'm
present down at the bottom. I can put this in the chat, but then if you want to just share screen under present, it'll pop up and I can add it.
okay. Let me see how I can. This share screen. Okay. Oh, okay, I see. Wait, where did the search go? Oh, here. Share. Can we see it? Maybe?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yay.
So I think this little thing here, I think if I click it
Oh,
on.
yay. It's got the Marie Kondo question. What brings you joy?
Yeah.
Good.
I think this, and it's like a very different thing for everybody. And it's something that I guess changes for me as well. But like, what brings you joy? What are you good at? And what work needs doing? And kind of finding that intersection of those things. Because if you're not, I think a lot of people think about like activism having to be really like anger inducing and draining and all these things. And it can be for sure, but you're more likely to burn out if you're doing that. And so if you find something that also makes you happy, not always, but at least for some of the time, you're like more likely to continue doing that. And then also doing something that's actually useful, right? Like if you're, I don't know, donating a bunch of money to something, or you're spending a bunch of time, I don't know, sewing something, whatever, that doesn't actually need sewing, then it's not super productive. And also you have to be good at it, because if you're not, then that's also going to drain you and you're not going to want to do it. So
Yeah.
I don't have a specific for me, but I think in general, this diagram is a good thing to kind of ponder about for people.
That's a great answer. Yeah. And I haven't read All We Can Save for a couple years, but I should probably like reread and dip back in. It's a good one.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I was just trying to figure out how to stop.
Yeah, no, sorry. I removed it
Thank
from direct your outrage. So I will say for the end of 2024, we had some outrage in 2024. After the election, it really hit me that like we're gonna have a terrible time for climate, and it's just like the death knell. So I was really depressed after the election, and I was like reading, sleeping, doing not much else. And when I was reading this stuff, I was like, okay, so the glimmer of hope, or the reason that I'm gonna get up in the morning, is gonna be because I'm gonna help forge these local networks, right? The only hope we have for surviving and thriving or helping others is like getting to know the people, being there in person, and trying to establish resilience. And like I said, in the event of losing my electricity and internet, I'm gone in 2 days. But if we know where to find things, and we know like people who know how to do different skills, like we can join up in a little tribe, a little community. And so I sort of really, I'm super slow at it, but I'm trying to get better at local things and being in person again, and reaching out and being present with that. So that's my answer, is that like every time I get outraged, it's like, okay, I'm on TikTok. I'm going to leave the TikTok and think, okay, what is the local version of this that I can connect with?
Yeah.
A little productive. Yeah.
I think that's a great answer. And it's, at the end of the day, your local community is going to be the one that helps you and saves you, right? Like even now, like when my internet went out, I was like, what if it just doesn't come back? And I was like, do I even remember like the codes to my friends' houses that live nearby? Like how do I even, if I walk to their house or to their apartment, how do I find them, right? Like, I mean, I have them somewhere in my phone, but what if my phone disappears? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, we could have a whole apocalypse like discussion about where would we go? What would we need? What would be happening outside the window?
Yes, honestly, like completely unprepared sitting here, but yeah, local community, it's very important.
Yeah. Do you have snow outside the door?
No, it's like
No?
yesterday I think was 10 degrees. Today is 5 or
That's the
6.
same as here at nighttime.
It shouldn't be.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It really should not be. I went biking today. Like it was a little windy, but it's fine. Yeah, it's a little bit too warm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna wind us down. Do you have any announcements about like what's happening next or like where to find you on the interwebs if you want to be part of the digital
Yes.
community?
Yeah, I have not been very active on my YouTube channel, but in the next 1 to 2 weeks, if you want to find out more about Climathon 2025, make sure you're following Margaret, me, and Tasman. I will leave Tasman's information down below as well, because we're going to have an announcement video for that, which I'm very excited about. Yeah, that's like the big thing. Climathon 2025.
Yay!
Yeah, excited.
Awesome. And my next thing, let's see, we have this book discussion, nothing tomorrow, and then Sunday I'm doing a little planning stream. So I'm sure climate stuff in 2025 will play a good big role in that. And I'm excited for it. So if you want to come back Sunday regular stream time, we should be streaming with some friends, doing some planning for next year.
Cool.
Otherwise, thank you for joining us today. Definitely still a book worth reading, both for seeing like the structural roots of what we're in today and a little bit of the solutions that might still relate to what we're doing today and how it can be more effective. So thank you for joining me here, Anya, and everybody who's watched, and we'll see you again soon.
Yes, thank you guys. Bye-bye.